Good morning, everybody. My name is Deborah Byrne from DBpsychology Services, known across social media as DBpsychology. So today I'm going to talk about traumatic grief. The aim of this week's blog was to talk about traumatic grief in teens. I specifically targeted teens, and I'll come to that in a moment as to why. But anybody of any age can in fact suffer from traumatic grief. So even if you don't have teenagers, even if you have adult children like myself or whatever, you need to be aware that traumatic grief exists, and it's good to know the symptoms. So traumatic grief itself is actually not a normal grieving. It's not normal grief. It is a form of PTSD, and it interferes with the actual normal grieving pattern, and it in fact interrupts the normal grieving pattern. It usually happens because of an unexpected death. Now that could be because somebody died suddenly for natural reasons, or perhaps in case of teens or a child, they weren't given all the information, so therefore they weren't expecting, even if it is a grandparent's death, they weren't expecting that death, and that happens. And yes, it can be because you have experienced the sudden death of somebody through, cancer. Maybe it was a cancer diagnosis, and you weren't quite, ready for that person to die, or it came quicker than you expected. It could be because of other illnesses. It can also be, of course, a car accident, or perhaps suicide has occurred. The whole idea is that it is unexpected to you, the person, the individual. It is totally unexpected to them, and therefore we get this PTSD symptoms can occur. And I do have a blog up on the website, which is www.DeborahByrnePsychologyServices.com, and it talks about PTSD. And the other thing I have up on the website is I have two blogs, one for adults and one for children, and it is all about what would be the normal grieving symptoms in children and what would be the normal grieving symptoms in an adult, and how you can help your child or your adult child, or how you can help your teen through those processes. But to get back to traumatic grief, as I said, traumatic grief is really an interruption of the normal grieving process, and it is a form of PTSD. So, in saying that, what should happen? Well, with teens, and why I targeted teens really was because with teenagers, the normal process of the emotions and the hormones and everything that's going on with them, sometimes we can put down the traumatic grief to just that. Oh, the symptoms are getting worse. What was going on before the death happened can in fact exacerbate the symptoms that they were having of their normal teenager. The outbursts, everything else can actually get worse. So we can just put it down to teenagers, is what I'm trying to say. We can mark it off as, they're just being teenagers. It's just a trauma. They're fine. They grow out of it, and we fail to recognise that in fact they are having PTSD symptoms. They are having a reaction to the death of somebody in their lives, or not. It doesn't even have to be somebody close. It could be a school friend. It could be a school friend's parent. Sometimes the kids, because of that emotional roller coaster, the hormones are all, everything is flying all over the place. They can get so caught up and so emotional in other people's business that we don't realize how badly they can be affected. As parents, we can fail to recognize that sometimes, or fail to give it enough, enough notice, enough attention. So one of the recommendations I do make in the blog is to, be the private investigator again. I always say with your children, with your teens, be a private investigator. What has gone on before? Why has something, become more? Why have their behaviours changed? What's gone on before? And in the blog, I list ways in which, and there are symptoms. It is symptoms in this particular blog. I don't specifically target the PTSD symptoms. I actually show the PTSD symptoms and how a teen with traumatic grief might express them. So there's at least 10, I think there are maybe more. I can't remember exactly the number of those symptoms, but I show you how, in fact, that may manifest in a teenager. And that is why I've targeted them specifically in this blog. So how can you help? With teens or with anybody with traumatic grief, as I said, it's PTSD related. You must do an intervention. There must be a therapist has to come involved. And with that, I say, in this case, it would be a child psychologist. As I would in fact go and get a psychologist on board in this case, or somebody who has a therapist who has a huge amount of experience and deals and understands totally traumatic grief. They have to know what traumatic grief is. Not everybody does. Not everybody has recognized it in this country, and so please be careful. Try and always with a therapist get a recommendation. Try and talk to people, go to your GP, but an intervention has to happen from a therapist. There is a specific type of treatment for this. It's very good, very quick. Interventions can happen very quickly, and the situation can be resolved. But you need a professional help here. You cannot wait. You can't tackle it on your own. Yes, you can help, and I'm going to give you some ways in which you can help your child or your teen, but you really do need an intervention here from a qualified professional. And always remember too, you don't have to go just directly to your GP, although it always helps to go there and have their support. You can self-refer to a psychologist or a counsellor. Now, how as a parent, after you've gone and you've looked for the interventions, how can you help your child? Well, always, as we say, be present for your child. That they need, particularly with teens, they kind of tend to revert back a little bit. So they want your love, they want your attention, they want you to be present for them. They just need that reassurance. They need your reassurance that no matter what you'll do, what they do, you will be there for them with everything. So be present. Being non-judgmental is very, very important, particularly in this case. It's always important with teens to be non-judgmental and to try and be patient and calm. But particularly in this instance with traumatic grief, you really, really need a lot of patience. You could be faced with a lot of outbursts, and as I said, go back and have a look at the list of symptoms and how a teen might express them. Your patience will probably be tested. So you need that. You need your patience. You need to be calm, and you need to be non-judgmental. So just being there, you'll have they'll be laughing one minute and crying the next. So you need to be there for them, and just don't make fun of them, and as you would, you don't make fun of them, and you're just there for them. Talk about how you're coping. If it has been a family member, it's okay to talk about how you're coping. Now, I specify this, and I'm underlying it. It's not about you. When you're talking about how you're coping, what you're doing to help negative thoughts, how are you coping with maybe there's added stress? How are you coping with, trying to relax? This isn't about you talking about you. This is about you modeling and talking about good and healthy behaviors that you can do to help yourself. So you're using yourself as an illustration of maybe what they can do. I would also preference this by saying, let the conversation unfold. Sometimes teens will not want to talk about the death of somebody, particularly if it's a close family member, or maybe even if it is a school friend and something has happened there, because they're afraid that if you knew that person, if they're, as I said, family member, that you will get upset. They'll want to protect you. So you have to let them know that it's okay to talk about it. It's okay to talk about that person. I'm not going to get into floods of tears. I'm not going to be suddenly reduce this heap on the floor because you, my teenage child, are talking about this person. You need to reassure them that it's okay to talk. And they do need to encourage, you do need to encourage them. But as I said, allow the conversation to unfold naturally if you can. So the next thing I talk about is social media. In terms of social media, sometimes they'll push you away, and they will withdraw from the family, withdraw from friends, but they will post stuff on social media. So you do need to have a conversation, and it is a conversation we should be having with our teens anyway. But you talk about what's appropriate to share and what isn't, and explain to them that, do you still want to see what you wrote in 10 or 20 or 30 years' time? It'll always be out there. So, try and get them, although, they do want to share, they will, teens, and they want to share. That's the way it is now. People, they share everything. Get them to try and filter that. Try and help them to filter and understand it's important to filter what they are putting up there and what they're putting out there into the social media land. The next 2 points are very important. Encourage them to get into a routine again. So, if they have the sports, encourage the sports. Get them to maybe take up a sport or doing things that'll help them relax. Monitor what they're eating. Some people with grief will, of course, not eat, or some people will overeat. So, you've got to encourage the healthy eating. But they need a routine. They can't be skipping school. You have to get them to go to school, do their sports, meet their friends on a face-to-face level. That is very important. They need that interaction. They need to be talking to one another, as long as those friends are healthy. If you have to monitor what's going on between the friends as well. So inviting those friends into the home. I always say to parents, yes, for a few years your house is going to become a dump site for all these kids. Yes, they're going to invade your territory, and you'll think at times this is crazy, because maybe you feel like all these kids are always at my house. Why can't they go to somebody else's house? Invite them in. Always invite your particularly teenagers, but try and get them coming into your house from the time they're young. Coming to your home, it's a safe place. You get to see what's going on. You get to meet the friends. You get to meet the friends' parents. That's very important. Doesn't matter if this is nothing, this can be nothing to do with traumatic grief, but getting to know their parents, getting to know the kids, getting them in your home, you hear everything. You become, as I say, you become part of the walls. It's the same as doing the school runs. You become the steering wheel and the chair in which you're sitting. You keep your mouth shut and you just keep your ear open and you hear things. And they become so used to you being around. You are practically part of the walls. And they know you as a nice person to talk to. And you're firm, but you're a nice person as well. So inviting them in there, get that routine going, get that whole natural routine they had before, maybe encouraging a little bit more if they were a little bit, they had been a bit shy beforehand, encourage the friends to come over, as I said, get them talking and talking to you. The other thing is important, and it's the last point I'll make this morning, is about being a private investigator. I've said this time and time again. As a parent, your job, and particularly with teens, is to be a private investigator. What is going on with the people they're interacting with outside the family home? So what has gone on before? What has gone on? If you're unsure whether the child, a death has happened, but you're unsure as whether this is traumatic grief or not, think about their behaviour before the death. What was going on? Has that escalated up? Get to know, as I said, the symptoms of PTSD. Are they exhibiting those symptoms? Look at the symptoms and how they are expressed in this week's blog. Talk to their friends' parents. Have they any information? Can they shed some light on, how are they behaving there? what's going on when they're in their house or when they're in their presence, if they go out with them. Talk to teachers, and that just doesn't include teachers in school. If they're doing sports, if they're doing any sort of activity, if they're in guides, if they're in scouting, if they're in, any sort of club, association, art class, music teachers outside of school, talk to all of them. Talk to every teacher, tutor, coach. Find out what's going on. If you know your child has PTSD, traumatic grief, work with those people as well. They need to be aware that this is what's going on with your child, and work out how they can help you help your child. Okay, so you work as a team with these people. They are with your child, whether it's only for an hour a week or whether it's for several hours a week. They are with your child. They are having an influence over your child. They need to be on board and be a support team to your child, and be understanding, and understand that traumatic grief is going on, and understand that, your child may do X because of this traumatic grief, and that they understand that the child is seeing a therapist. You need to be, you need to use your common sense there and how much you want to reveal, but they need to come on board and be your child's supporter. And if there is an incident or something happens, you need to be told about it. They can't just deal with it there and then. Yes, they will have to, do discipline or whatever they need to do there and then with your child, but they need to inform you as to what has gone on, so that you can then talk to the psychologist, and you're informed, the psychologist is informed, and therefore things can be, an intervention can happen at a bigger level, a higher level with your child. So I will leave it there for this morning, and I want to thank everybody my regular people that watch every week, and Deirdre, hi Deirdre, thank you again, and I'll leave it there. And of course, happy Valentine's Day to everybody out there. Don't forget, show a bit of self-love too. I know today's the day of love, but love self first too. So I will leave it there, and I will see you all again next week, and thank you for watching.